Hello, guys. It's Halloween, and I thought it might be kind of cool just for Halloween to do what is kind of a horror film. I don't know if you might sort of fit it more into a kind of a sci-fi kind of category, but it is definitely this franchise in general is definitely a franchise that typically scares a lot of people. It certainly did scare me a lot as a kid. So, Alien 3. I'll just get you up to speed on basically how I felt about the first two films. Alien is one of my all-time favorite films. Great tone of building suspense and the kind of shock, kind of horror builds, and never quite sure when you're safe, and interesting kind of twists. Aliens, I don't want to go as far as to say it's a better film than the first one, but it does definitely get a great balance of keeping the basic format the same. The kind of basic ideas that were established in the first film, but doing something completely new with it. It's basically a sort of war or marine kind of film, fighting several aliens when you were fighting one before. The ending is the only thing I really didn't like about it as a sequel, because it was a bit too similar to the first one. But otherwise, it's a very kind of solid kind of film. I think I prefer the sort of more sort of suspenseful, not quite sure when you're safe, shock horror of the first film. So I would say that personally I prefer the first one, but they are both great films, and they are both films that you have to watch together. You can't have one without the other, I would say. And Alien 3 is a film a lot of people say shouldn't exist. They should have just stopped to the second film. I actually disagree with that. I think film series work much better with three films. The films typically have a three-act structure, so film series should have a three-film structure. I think it works much better with three. This does at least do a good job of wrapping up the series, but I can certainly see why people don't like the idea of this film existing, because it's not a particularly good film. It really doesn't particularly build on top of what either of the first two films do. It's really just a rehash of the first film, only not done as well and not really anything like as interesting. The only thing I like about this film as a sequel, I think, is that it actually does do a good job of wrapping up the series and making it very clear that this is the last film. Or it should have been the last film anyway, but I won't get into that. So basically, right off the bat, when you start with this film, you've got Ripley being recovered from the pod, much like in the second film, and the rest of the crew are dead. I think that's the first thing that's going to piss off a lot of people about the mere fact that this film even exists, is the fact that, if this film didn't exist, we could just assume that Ripley and Newt made it back to Earth and just lived happily ever after. Perhaps, they even lived together. Perhaps Ripley adopted her. With this film, no, Newt's dead. She's dead before the film even starts. That's it. This little girl that we were rooting for so much, we so wanted to see survive throughout the second film, they're just going to kill her before this film even starts. It's really just pretty mean-spirited from then on. There's no happy ending to this at all. Ripley dies at the end of it. It's all just sort of misery throughout this film. I mean, it takes place in a prison. Ripley is really the only likable character in the entire film. The rest of them are just criminals that spend a large amount of time arguing and saying pretty uninteresting things. The thing I liked about the first film was, I felt like there were a lot of characters in it, but I felt like we knew all of them and we cared about all of them before they actually died. So it was pretty meaningful when each of them was killed off. Whereas with this one, I don't care about any of them. I don't really, even the characters that I knew, I didn't care about them because they weren't likable. I didn't find any of them particularly interesting, and I could not stand listening to them argue constantly. Alien in it, once again, like the first film, it's one alien again. The alien birth scene, obviously we saw it in the first film, so they don't spend a huge amount of time on that, because obviously by that point we know what's happening. It's born from a dog this time around, which I assumed, was just a quick sort of cheap tool to, get the alien into the film as quickly as possible, not having to actually kill anyone important off. But actually I hear that because it was born from a dog, it's actually supposed to be dog-like. And that's actually kind of an interesting idea. That would have been, something kind of cool to work off of, because it's not something we've seen in the franchise before. But no, it's barely noticeable. I only found out about that from looking it up. It's not something that the film ever looks into or touches on or uses in any particular way. I'm trying to think, it walks on all fours maybe. There's nothing else that the alien does in this film that's anything particularly dog-like that, really becomes particularly significant. I mean, there's scenes later on in the film where the alien is chasing the other criminals around. I guess maybe dogs can dogs run faster than humans? I don't think they can really. So no, that would not play into the fact that it's dog-like. It's also interesting during all these chase scenes. It's literally people running away from aliens in this film. That's sort of how dumbed down a version of it is. A lot of them are done from sort of POV shots, which look kind of interesting at first, but I kind of wonder if the only reason that they've done that is just so that, they can save money on special effects. They don't have to actually show the alien for a lot of the chase scenes. There's not really a huge amount else to say about it. Again, I don't find any of the characters particularly interesting. I like the concept of there's no guns allowed in this prison. Again, it's an enclosed space and there are no weapons. That's, a very kind of interesting kind of situation. It was kind of looked on in the second film as well. But to be honest, I think it was made kind of clear that, these aliens are pretty clever. Guns aren't much use against them anyway, as we saw in the first film. There's actually a reason why, they have no guns to use against this. There are no guns allowed in this prison. So they have to find some other kind of clever way to defeat it. I like that as an idea. And they kind of explore a couple of interesting ways to try and kill it, because most of the characters in this film, are kind of idiotic. They don't really do very much in an effort to try and kill it. In the end, it's all just sort of Ripley deciding to sacrifice herself. And obviously there's the other sort of subplot that is a way of trying to wrap up the series by killing Ripley at the end. Ripley has a queen growing inside her, and another guy at the prison. Again, I couldn't pick up on any of the characters' names or their positions in the prison, but one of the guys in charge of the prison basically comes to a rather sort of strange assumption that the alien, because there's another alien growing inside of it, Ripley, the alien won't kill Ripley. I'm not sure how it knows that there's an alien. I guess it's dog-like, so it can maybe pick up the scent, perhaps, of the alien inside of Ripley. He decides that they can use that in order to kill this alien. But the thing is, Ripley has told him that, potentially this is thousands of other aliens that are growing inside of her because it's a queen. You're counting, one alien against potentially thousands you've got here. Wouldn't it make more sense to just kill Ripley there and then, and try and find some other way to kill this alien? The excuse he makes is that since the alien doesn't want to kill Ripley, they can sort of use that in some kind of way. But I don't really see how that makes it any easier, really. The way that they get the alien into the furnace is they just sort of say to it, "Hey, over here," and then they run away and they chase it into the furnace. I don't really see how the alien not wanting to kill Ripley really plays into that in any particular way. I think that's kind of a dumb decision that he's made there, to not kill Ripley because he thinks that they can use that fact to kill this alien when potentially Ripley has thousands of other aliens inside of her. Actually, I will say I like the effects on the sort of the mangled up Bishop android, after he was split in two at the end of the second film, when Ripley reactivates him to find out stuff basically that we already knew from, the opening sequence, basically. And I think we probably could have guessed anyway, that there was indeed another alien inside the pod. Apparently he laid 2 eggs inside of the dog and Ripley. I'm not quite sure. Do facehuggers do that? Do they lay 2 eggs? I don't recall them ever establishing that in the previous 2 films. Yeah, I like the effects on Bishop there. Kind of a good work by the effects department there. But at the end of the film, Ripley is faced with potentially a decision that she can perhaps trust this head of the company to take her in and to destroy this alien in some kind of other way that means that she won't have to die. And she can just live a normal life from then on. But I think logically, because this guy's the head of the company that, have gone behind their backs on previous occasions, she quite logically decides she can't trust him. And that's kind of a noble sacrifice, I think, by Ripley, because this is a choice between her being potentially able to live and choosing what is definitely the more logical option here, which is, but at the same time she will have to die, killing herself in order to kill this queen alien inside of her. So it is kind of a noble sacrifice, I think, by Ripley, deciding quite logically that this guy can't be trusted and instead choosing to kill herself. So I do like that about the ending, and obviously the attempts to wrap up the series by just killing Ripley at the end. And then they go and make another film anyway. And not only that, they make another film only a few years later, Honestly, guys, if you're going to make a sequel after the previous film made it quite obvious that the film series was done, you really need a very good reason to make that next film, and there really is absolutely no reason why Alien Resurrection exists, because, again, it's basically just another running away from aliens type story, except there's quite a lot of them this time. Apparently they're not finished yet. Ridley Scott's come back and made Prometheus, which I would go as far to say is probably the worst film of the entire franchise. God, if I have to watch one more scene of fucking alien snarling at the camera at me. Thankfully, actually, this film did not have that much of that kind of stuff. There's a few moments where the music is building up. Ooh, what's going to happen? And we know what's going to happen. The alien's going to snarl at the camera. The victim is going to scream suddenly, and then, we're going to cut away and they're obviously dead. But thankfully, this film did not have too much of that. So there's a few elements in it that I kind of like, but for the most part, it's just sort of more of the same. And it does resort to a more kind of generic kind of monster action shock movie with a lot of characters I really don't care about. But I do like the ending. That is the one thing I will say about it. Okay, so that's Alien 3, guys. Happy Halloween, and I will see you again soon for another film review.